Hegelian dialect. But I forgot the first thing he said to look up. So first we'll do this.
It'll take you on a rabbit hole anyhow.
Right. All right. Let's see. It just says dialect. Also known as the dialectical method, refers originally to dialogue between people holding different points of view about a subject, but wishing to arrive at a truth through reasoned argument. Okay. Dialect resembles debate, but the concept excludes subjective elements such as emotional appeal and rhetoric. It has its origins in ancient philosophy and continued to be developed in the Middle Ages. But see, that's a flawed theory. You can't have an argument that is that with concepts excluding subjective elements such as feelings and appeal, because the reality is you believe what you want to believe. You really don't have any evidence for any of it. Like the idea that you think science is real, right? That you think the Big Bang theory is real. If it was real, it wouldn't be the Big Bang theory. There you go. It wouldn't be it. It would be the Big Bang philosophy, the Big Bang law. It's that understanding that people don't really have. That again, it comes from the understanding that the more you know, the dumber you sound. And I don't think people realize that. But when I start talking about how stars and shit form, that's dumb. It's religious dumb. And at the end of the day, it literally requires the exact same type of faith that religion does. Because the people telling you this with absolute certainty, they have no fucking idea. How could they possibly know how a universe or how a galaxy was formed? How could they possibly know how stars are formed? In what arena do they test this hypothesis in? Do they have a little tiny, a room that's made where they can make fucking stars and be like, oh, okay, that's how stars are made. Oh, okay. No. The whole concept of it is just stupid, and it 100% relies on gravity. This magical force that just sort of appears and starts pulling debris in, and as it pulls the debris in, and it makes it a big enough debris ball, somehow it lights itself on perpetual fire for the rest of eternity, and then around that, now new gravity pockets form, and they collect debris. Except these, the inside's like a Tootsie Pop, and it fucking that the inside forms the fire that stays lit forever, but the outside has, in our case, water on it, which also makes the atmosphere so the monkeys can live on it. Yep, that makes all the sense, doesn't it? Don't I sound like a super smart guy when I say those things? And because I use the words I use, you're like, no, that's dumb. That's what you believe.
They don't say it like that, though. They say it in a way that makes me feel better.
Exactly.
Because I don't understand it, so it must be real.
They say it in a way, and they also say it with an arrogance. That arrogance of, you can't question me. How dare you question me? I have a white coat on. My name is Finkelstein. Your name is not Steenberg anything. So that's literally, and then we go, and really, the reality is, they first put it on you when you're a little kid, and you see spaceships and shit, and you're like, that is so cool. I want to do that. I want to be like Jet Planet and fly my garage car out into space and go from planet to planet. That sounds amazing. I'm going to do that. And then when you get to school, they go, okay, if you don't fucking repeat this shit, we're going to call your parents and tell them there's something wrong with you. We might even put you on drugs. So you better repeat this shit and you better get it right. Be as accurate as you can. Because if you don't get the good grades, then, you lose you don't get paid. You don't get your allowance. You don't get to go out. You don't get to watch TV. You get punished. You get to study more now. You didn't get good grades. You got to study, study, study. So that you can regurgitate that shit. Because if you don't, again, the next form of school will look back on your previous form and be like, hey, I see how much you're getting paid here. You better get paid more here. And if you don't get paid more here, well, you don't get to go to the next level. And it's just bullshit. It's just regurgitation with that sense of reward. They make it so you hate it. So when you hate something, you remember it just long enough. As soon as you don't need to remember it anymore, you're like, bleh, and you just let it go. And now you just remember little bits and pieces.
And I swear it's just so we don't remember what they don't want us to know.
It's to fill in that hole. It's so we don't ask the question. If we have the answer, we won't ask the question. If they give us the answer that we live here, we live in this, we live the Milky Way is actually a spiral galaxy. And our solar system in the Milky Way, is on one of the far-reaching wave nebula spiral thing bubbles. We're all the way out here. So the middle, it's like a fried egg. The middle, it's like how everything in the universe is a fried egg. There's the center of the egg, and then around the egg, a straight in a fucking a straight line, everything goes out. And with ours, it's a spiral, so there's the little spirals on each side. And our solar system is way out here on the side. There's the middle of the galaxy here, but ours is way over here. And we know that because we were like there and stuff. Oh no, see, the thing is, if we use our telescopes, we can look back in time. Yep. Back in time with the telescope. Well, it's not a telescope. It sees in infrared. And then the images are translated by the computer that then creates the images we see. Because, duh, it's real. It's the James Webb Space Telescope. It's out at one of the Lagrange points. So they don't have to actually fuel it, and it can stay in the Earth's shadow at all times. No, if it breaks, it's fucked. Remember how they milked that bullshit with the Hubble? And the Hubble broke all the time and all this other shit, blah, blah, blah. Not the James Webb. James Webb's just out in the Lagrange point, getting yanked along by the Earth's gravity. Fine. Big sails and shit. It's so stupid. This is what you have to believe. It's not my story. You have to believe it. It's not my fault you don't know what a Lagrange point is. The Lagrange point that was theorized by the guy in the 1770s or whatever. That's why it's called Lagrange. Because he was like, yeah, the Earth and the 93 million miles away, the sun and the round and the fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's fucking do it. But the thing is, like, all of those narratives are just dumb. they're just like they just fit in when they need them to fit in. Well, Isaac Newton had his theory of gravity when he was sitting under an apple tree, and the apple fell down and plunked him on the head. So that must mean there's a force.
Were they George Washington's apples?
No. No. Different play.
Oh.
Yeah.
Same hair.
Right.
Hair didn't change much.
Speaking of hair, look, gravity. Look at the gravity. Look at the force pulling the hair down towards the center of the earth. Look at it. Oh, you don't know about static electricity. Right. Gravity has to be the smartest force ever. See, like, this is what happens when you actually think about things. It's the same thing with germs, right? Germs have to be, like, actually intelligent in order to fit the narrative that they want you to believe. These germs that exist inside your body at 98.6 degrees get expelled, and they either float around in a cloud, or they fall onto the whatever, or worst of all, you get germ sauce on your hand. And now you walk around and everything you touch gets some more germ sauce on it. It's invisible germ sauce. But it is fucking ugh. It's everywhere. I mean, you can wash it off your hands. But until you do, man, you just spreading germ sauce. Now, the germ sauce forms these little, like, intelligent colonies, right? They just sit there and now, remember, most cold and flu season is when it gets cold. So it goes from the 98-degree body out to like the 50-degree air, or the table that it's sitting on, or whatever it is. It gets pretty cold. Or the cloud is floating again in the 50-degree air. And these germs are just waiting for somebody else to come along and drag their hand through said invisible sauce, touch the pen with the invisible sauce on it, push the door open with the invisible sauce. And now that invisible sauce is on, it knows to grab onto their hands. And now it's waiting until they go to touch their nose, or maybe scratch their chin or something like that. And when they do, the sauce knows to jump off their hands, and now it's on their face, and it works its way into their orifices, and now it gets you sick if you don't have a strong enough immune system. Which is, again, what? Can anybody tell me what your immune system is? People don't like that.
Oh, wait, am I shushing you?
Yes.
That's bad, right?
People don't like that. Like, it's your organs. I know. Which ones? Oh, it's a system. They all work together. What? Like, tell me what it is, so I can strengthen it with something other than the poisons, the steroids. We're gonna give your body immune steroids. Yeah, it'll make you stronger. Yeah, we'll do it for free. Here you go. Here's your free stuff from the. Hey, how many other things does the government give us for free? For straight. They encourage you. They bribe you. During COVID, they were bribing people. Remember?
Yeah. Here's gift cards to this store.
Yeah, free donuts, free this, free whatever, like everywhere.
Some places were offering like $150 gift cards.
Right. Oh, it got big.
Big money.
When does that? What are you talking about? We can do that, but we can't. Like, they could track people with COVID, but they can't track pedos.
Perfect sense.
We can do all that for COVID, but we can't do that for pedos. Like, it just what we end up believing and accepting and just like taking is just fucking crazy. So I'm supposed to read this Hegelian dialect, right? Here we go. Oh, that changed. I was like, what the hell? Okay. Uh, has its origins in ancient philosophy. Hegelian, maybe that's what I should look up. Refigured dialect to no longer refer to a literal dialogue. Instead, the term takes on the specialized meaning of development by way of overcoming internal contradictions. Yuck. Excuse me. Dialectal, dialectical materialism, a theory advanced by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, adapted the Hegelian dialect into a materialist theory of history. The legacy of Hegelian and Marxian dialects has been criticized by philosophers such as Karl Popper and Mario Bunge, who considered it unscientific. Dialect implies a developmental process and so does not naturally fit within classical logic. Nevertheless, some 12th century logicians, a logician, have attempted to formalize it. Let's see. A logician.
Is that like a magician?
Sounds like it. In classical philosophy, dialect, I don't care about dialect. I want to hear about that. So let's go with the dialectical materialism is a materialist theory based upon the writings of Karl Marx, Jew, and Friedrich Engels, Jew, that has found widespread applications in a variety of philosophical disciplines ranging from philosophy of history to philosophy of science. Oh, those are both blue, by the way. As a materialist philosophy, Marxist dialectics emphasizes the importance of real-world conditions and the presence of functional contradictions within and among social relations, which derive from, but are not limited to, the contradictions that occur in social class, labor economies, and socio-economic interactions. Within Marxism, a contradiction is a relationship in which two forces oppose each other, leading to mutual development. In contrast with the idealist perspective of Hegelian dialects, the materialist perspective of Marxist dialects emphasizes that contradictions in material phenomenon could be resolved with dialectical analysis, from which is synthesized the solution that resolves the contradiction whilst retaining the essence of the phenomenon. Marx proposed that the most effective solution to the problems caused by contradiction was to address the contradiction and then rearrange the systems of social organization that are the root of the problem. That sounds about right. Dialectical materialism recognizes the evolution of the natural world and thus the emergence of new qualities of being human and of human existence. Engels used the metaphysical insight that the higher level of human existence emerges from and is rooted in the lower level of human existence. That the higher level of being is a new order with irreducible laws, and that the evolution is governed by laws of development which reflect the basic properties of matter in motion. In the 1930s, in the Soviet Union, the book Dialectical and Historical Materialism, 1938, by Joseph Stalin, set forth the Soviet formulation of dialectical materialism and of historical materialism, which were taught in the Soviet system of education. In the People's Republic of China, analogous, I hate that word, analogous, what is that word?
I always skip on it or trip on it too.
Text was the essay On Contradiction by Mao Zedong, which was a foundational document of Maoism. Isn't it funny
Maoism.
how all of these guys that were like these dictators that had, you know, thousands of people under their control and all this other shit had time to write books? They all had time to write books.
I mean, that came naturally to them because they were so multi-talented. So it's not like they had to try hard.
All those polymaths. The term dialectical materialism was coined in 1886. I mean, don't you love how all of these years are the same?
Mm-hmm.
Every story, it's always the same. It's almost like humanity emerged out of something around that time and history sort of started over. Almost. By Joseph Deitzken, a socialist who corresponded with Marx. I mean, right there. So in 1887, they were corresponding, huh? How? I'm sure his people were like super far away from each other. So how were they fucking corresponding? Let's see. Joseph, I knew I was going to say he's German. That name, Joseph Zeitzken, was a German socialist philosopher, Marxist, and journalist. So he lived from 1828, December 9th, to April 15th, 1888. Right there. Hey, we got the Sioux, we got the Sandy Hook story on here. Bullshit. So this guy was born in Blankenburg, Germany, and died in Chicago. 19th century philosopher. So so he was corresponding with Marx from either Germany or the United States in 1887. Can you imagine how long that would take? I'm going to write a letter and give it to what, the post office? Was the postal service a thing? You know what? That's what I want to look up.
Oh God, that's a dangerous thing to look up.
Nah.
Postal Service.
Postal service.
Talk about a racket that nobody talks about.
Nobody. I want to know the history of the shit.
It's a Pony Express, and it's the and
Right, they were on ponies, and the one guy would be riding, and the horse would be set and waiting for him, and as soon as he'd get there, he'd jump from one pony to the next and just get going. It was the express. That's what you all think it was, right?
yes, that's what they taught us.
That's what you've been shown a gazillion times. Look, I did postal service, and literally like a couple of things came up, and it didn't even. That's weird.
There's no option for history of.
Not, I mean, now I had to look up Postal Service Wiki. Okay. The Postal Service was an American indie pop. No. United States Postal Service. Okay, that makes more sense. Also known as the Post Office, U.S. Mail, or simply the Postal Service, is an independent agency of the executive branch. Who would have thought that, huh?
Oh yeah, you didn't know that? That's not covered.
Independent agency of the executive branch of the United States federal government. Well, yeah, it is.
I mean,
Responsible for providing postal service in the United States. Its insular areas, its insular areas and associated states. Insular areas are in the law of the United States. An insular area is a U.S. associated jurisdiction that is not part of the United States or the District of Columbia, which, we got to look that one up too. This includes 14 U.S. territories administered under U.S. sovereignty, as well as 3 sovereign states, each of which a compact of free association with the United States. The term, what? Also may be referred, or may be used to refer to the previous status of the Swan Islands, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, as well as the trust territory of the Pacific Islands when it existed. Three of the U.S. territories are in the Caribbean Sea, 11 are in the Pacific Ocean, and all 3 freely associated states are also in the Pacific Ocean. Who the fuck knew that? Two additional Caribbean territories are disputed and administered by Colombia, which the capital of the United States is in the District of Columbia for some reason. Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, 432 of the U.S. Constitution grants the United States Congress the responsibility of overseeing the territories. A series of U.S. Supreme Court decisions known as the Insular Cases created a distinction between incorporated territories, where the full Constitution of the United States applies, and unincorporated territories, where only basic protections apply. The only current incorporated territory, Palmyra Atoll, is uninhabited. A U.S. territory is considered organized when the U.S. Congress passes an organic act. Jesus. An organic act for it. Three of the U.S. territories with a permanent non-military population have constitutions, and all five have locally elected territorial legislatures and executives and some degree of political autonomy. Four of the five are organized, but American Samoa is technically unorganized and subject of the direct jurisdiction of the Office of Insular Affairs.
Don't mess with that.
You're right. The first insular area that the United States occupied were Baker Island, Howland Island, and Navassa Island in 1857. Then Johnston Atoll and Jarvis Island, both in 1858, would be claimed. After the Spanish-American War in 1898, several territories were taken that are still under U.S. sovereignty. Puerto Rico and Guam, both in 1898. Palmyra Atoll was annexed along with the Republic of Hawaii, formerly a kingdom. I wanted to look that one up too. Damn. That same year, Americans think about that. Look, so in the between 1858 and 1900, the U.S. is sailing all of these ships all over the fucking Pacific, taking all of these areas. The Kingdom of Hawaii is the story of how Hawaii is the United States is fucking awful. It's awful. No wonder the Hawaiians hate us. American Samoa was reclaimed the following year in 1899. So far away. And you know they fucking hate us. In 1917, at the height of World War I, Denmark sold the Danish Virgin Islands to the United States. It just doesn't make any sense. When you think about what you're told 1800s America looked like, to think that they were sailing all of these really impressive ships, fleets of ships to sail around to take islands and shit. The U.S. Navy annexed Kingdom Reef in 1922. Spain had sold the North Mariana Islands to Germany in 1899. The islands passed to Japan, which in turn lost them to the United States in 1945 after the end of World War II. That sounds like fucked up shit, right? We took land. The Marshall Islands became self-governing in 1979 and then fully independent along with the Federate States of Micronesia in 1986. Palau achieved independence in 1994. The three countries maintain sovereignty with free association status with the United States, which provides them with defense assistance and economic resources. That is crazy. Timeline: August 28th, 1867, Captain William Reynolds of the USS Lackawanna formally took possession of the Midway Atoll for the United States. USS Lackawanna. Yeah, that. That is sailing around with United States flags on it, taking land. What? Launched Launched on August 9th, 1862. Commissioned on January 8th, 1863. Decommissioned July 20th, 1865. Recommissioned May 7th, 1866. Decommissioned February 10th, 1871. Recommissioned May 8th, 1872. Decommissioned April 7th, 1885. Fate. Sold 30th July 1877. Gotta love 1877, man. Steam engine screw propelled. 237 feet. Lackawanna was launched by the New York Navy Yard at Brooklyn, New York on August 9th, 1862. Sponsored by Miss Imogen Page Cooper and was commissioned on January 8th, 1863. Captain John B. Marchland in command. The new Screw Slope of War Department, or departed New York. The new Screw Slope of War departed New York on January 20th, 1863, to join the Union blockade of the Confederate coast. She reported to the West Gulf Blockade Squadron at Pensacola, Florida, early in February 1863. For the remainder of the war, served along the Gulf Coast in the Confederacy, principally off Mobile Bay, Alabama. Lackawanna took her first prize. Okay, so wait a minute. So So I looked up, like, this is construction and commission. That's that little paragraph right there. You're not going to find out who built it, how they built the boat. It was just built. It was just there. They just had that boat. I want to know who built the screw propelled, the propeller. It's too much. I mean, this is crazy when you look at this timeline of all these different times the United States took land. Look at that shit. Jesus Christ. Wow, that was a lot. The following islands or island groups are considered insular areas. Incorporated organized territories. None. Incorporated unorganized territory. One. Uninhabited. Palmyra Atoll. U.S. territory of Palmyra Island, mostly owned by the federal government and the Nature Conservancy, administered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So, the capital of Puerto Rico. That's the capital of Puerto Rico. Who built this? Think about that. Like, think about where? Okay, so a lot of that I'm sure is marble and shit. Who built that? I want to know who built that building. I don't know what building that is. It's just capital of Puerto Rico. Six uninhabited islands, two uninhabited and disputed islands, two claimed territories, freely associated territories. That's some crazy shit. All right. It is one of the Postal Service is one of few government agencies explicitly authorized by the Constitution of the United States. As of 2023, the USPS has 525,469 career employees and 114,623 non-career employees. What that means? Formed. What? Formed on July 1st, 1971? That's strange, eh? The USPS has a monopoly on traditional letter delivery within the U.S. and operates under the the Universal Service Obligation, the USO, both of which are defined across a broad set of legal mandates, which obligate it to provide uniform price and quality across the entirety of its service area. Which is weird. Why doesn't everything have that? The Post Service the Post Office has exclusive access to letterboxes marked U.S. mail and personal letterboxes in the U.S., but has to compete against private package delivery services such as U.S. Parcel Service, FedEx, and DHL. Why would they have to compete? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I was talking to my letter carrier about this yesterday or the day before, and she was saying like there's a lot of issues going on. I was asking her about it, and she was saying, they're trying not to pay them more and blah blah blah. And you think like, how important is it to all of you to get your mail? Is it more important for you to get your mail than it is that Israel gets more and more billions of dollars? Wouldn't it be better for the government to put more money into the postal service so that the letter carriers are happy? You know, isn't that one of those positions that we want the people to be happy? And why would they be in any sort of competition with package delivery? Like, that's stupid. That there should be enough out there for everyone. Why would you know? It's just stupid. It's a bad system designed that way apparently, and we're gonna find out. I can already see one big hole. So, the history. The first national postal agency in the U.S., known as the United States Post Office, was founded in the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia on July 26th, 1775. Interesting. At the beginning of the American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin, super duper polymath, Benjamin Franklin, he could do anything and was everywhere, was appointed the first postmaster general. Why? What? What gave him that authority? He also served a similar position for the American colonies. The Post Office Department was created in 1792 with the passage of the Postal Service Act. The appointment of local postmasters was a major venue for delivering patronage jobs to the party that controlled the White House. Newspaper editors were often named. It was elevated to wow, they were named instead of hired newspaper editors. That's crazy. It was elevated to a cabinet level department in 1872 and was transformed by the Postal Reorganization Act of 1970 into the U.S. Postal Service as an independent agency. Since the early 1980s, many direct tax subsidies to the USPS, with the exception of subsidies for costs associated with disabled and overseas voters, have been reduced or eliminated. Notice how that history really, really yada yada'd over things, didn't it? We went from 1775 to the 1980s within like two sentences. There's one period, three or four sentences. The United States Information Agency helped the Post Office Department, you ever heard of that? During the Cold War, and redesigned stamps to include more patriotic slogans. On March 18, 1970, postal workers in New York, upset with low wages and poor working conditions, and emboldened by the civil rights movement, organized a strike. The strike initially involved postal workers in only New York City. They're not allowed to strike anymore. But it eventually gained support of over 210,000 postal workers across the nation. While the strike ended without any concessions from the federal government, it did ultimately allow the postal worker unions and the government to negotiate a contract which gave the unions most of what they wanted, as well as the signing of the Postal Reorganization Act by President Dick Nixon on August 12, 1970. The act replaced the cabinet level post office department with a new federal agency, the U.S. Postal Service, and took effect on July 1st, 1970. That's it? That's all I get? Wow, that's fucking nuts.
Give me time to think about it.
I'm. That's weird, right? That's all you get.
The answer is yes. Now I'm gonna go back to work.
The Post Office Department was created in 1790. Let's see what the Post Office Department was. The predecessor to the United States Postal Service, established in 1792. From 1872 to 1971, it was officially in the form of a cabinet department. It was headed by the Postmaster General. 1872, gotta love those 1870s.
But they're winning.
The Postal Service Act, signed by U.S. President George Washington on February 20th, 1792, established the department. Postmaster General John McLean, in office from 1823 to 1829, was the first to call it the Post Office Department rather than just the Post Office. The organization received a boost in prestige when President Andrew Jackson invited his Postmaster General, William T. Berry, to sit as a member of the cabinet in 1829. The Post Office Act of 1872 elevated the Post Office Department to cabinet status. During the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, postal service in the Confederate States of America was provided by the Confederate States of America Post Office Department. It's amazing. This thing lasted 1861 to 1865. I thought it was 71 to 75. I don't know why I thought that, but 61 to 65. And yet they were able to build a bunch of ships. They were able to build a post office network. They were able to get all the uniforms necessary for all the soldiers, build all the guns, do all the things they needed to do to wage a war, and lose it in 4 years. Well, I mean, prior to 4 years, I don't even know how that works. This is like what I was talking about yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, I absolutely proved that the system is a lie. You a lie. You's a lie. The system was lying to us about Samantha Wool, claiming that she was killed on October 21st in the morning. You know, one by 6 in the morning. Six. She was found dead by 6:30 in the morning. And on October 22nd, which is the next day, the news is saying how beautiful her funeral was, and that in the past tense, and that 1,000 people had attended her funeral. Well, if she died at, and was found dead at 6:30 a.m. on October 21st, and the paper is saying the funeral was beautiful, when did that take place? When was the funeral? Later that day, apparently. But hey, this is stuff that you guys don't like talking about, right? During the American Civil War, it is the Confederate States American Post Office Department, headed by Postmaster General John Heiniger Reagan. It faced insurmountable obstacles, especially the requirement that it did not run a deficit. The Reorganization Act was signed by President Dick Nixon on August 12th, 1970. It replaced the cabinet-level post office department with an independent United States Postal Service on July 1st, 1971. The regulatory role of the Postal Service was then transferred to the Postal Regulatory Commission. Isn't it funny how it's always the same wording? Almost like it wasn't humans that did it. It's just Chat GPT copy and pasting. Almost. Were you here yesterday during the Samantha Wool thing? When we proved that the funeral happened the same day? That's crazy shit. Get Mo. In the early years of the North American colonies, many attempts were made to initiate a postal service. These early attempts were of small scale and usually involved a colony, Massachusetts Bay Colony, for example, setting up a location in Boston where one could post a letter back home to England. Other attempts focused on a dedicated postal service between two of the larger colonies, such as Massachusetts and Virginia, but available services remained limited in scope and disjointed for many years. For example, informal, independently run postal routes operated in Boston as early as 1639, with a Boston to New York City service starting in 1672. Wish I knew what that is. Doesn't really give me an option to search that one. A central organization came to the colonies. Hang on a second. Oy vey. All right, here we go. I mean, this is crazy. We're talking about people like this idea that there was a New York City and a Boston and things like that. Like, weren't these just like wooden cabins and shit? The Central Postal Organization came to the colonies in 1691 when Thomas Neal received a 21-year grant from the British Crown for a North American postal service. On February 17th, 1691, a grant of letters patent from the joint sovereigns William III and Mary II empowered him to erect, settle, and establish within the chief ports of their majesties colonies and plantations in America, an office or offices for receiving and dispatching letters and paquets, packets, PACQUETS, and to receive, send, and deliver the same under such rates and sums of money as the planters shall agree to give, and to hold and enjoy the same for the term of 21 years. Oh, yeah, okay. The patent included the exclusive right to establish and collect a formal postal tax on official documents of all kind. The tax was repealed a year later. Neil Hamilton, governor of New Jersey, is deputy postmaster. The first postal service in America commenced on February 1692. Rates and postage were fixed and authorized, and measures were taken to establish a post office in each town in Virginia. That's so interesting. I would love to see how that worked. Massachusetts and other colonies soon passed postal laws, and a very imperfect postal system was established. Neil's patent expired in 1710 when Parliament extended the English postal system to the colonies. The chief office was established in New York City, where letters were convened by regular packets across the Atlantic. Before the American Revolution, there was only a trickle of business or governmental correspondence between the colonies. Geez, that seems like that's not what we've been told. Most of the mail went back and forth to counting houses and government offices in London. The Revolution made Philadelphia the seat of the Continental Congress, the information hub of the new nation. New news, new laws, political intelligence, and military orders circulated with new urgency, and a postal system was necessary. Journalists took the lead, securing post office legislation that allowed them to reach their subscribers at very low cost and to exchange news from newspapers between the 13 states. Overthrowing the London-oriented Imperial Postal Service in 1774-1775, printers enlisted merchants and the new political leadership and created a new postal system. The United States Post Office, USPO, was created on July 26, 1775 by decree of the Second Continental Congress. Benjamin Franklin headed it briefly. Before the Revolution, individuals like Benjamin Franklin and William Goddard were the colonial postmasters who managed the mails then and were the general architects of a postal system that started out as an alternative to the Crown Post. But see, you notice how there's all these details about this shit, but nobody's like, yeah, they figured out all the routes. They were running the routes doing this. Like, we don't understand the execution of it. After the Revolution, first national postal roadmap created in 1796 by Assistant Postmaster General Abraham Bradley. I mean, that's some incredible detail for 17 something or other. The post office was created in 1792 as the post office of the USPOD. It was based on the constitutional authority empowering Congress to establish post offices and post roads. In 1792, the 1792 law provided a greatly expanded postal network and served editors by charging newspapers an extremely low rate. How the fuck did newspapers exist in 1792? I'd love to know that. Like when you think about what it takes to create newspapers, right? You have a bunch of different reporters out there gathering stories, writing said story, turning it into editors who then read and check each story to make sure everything's good, decide the layout, lay it all out, print all the shit up, and then get it all out by the next day in 1792?
God, you're so cynical. They used a lot of pigeons.
All right. Uh, um, the law guaranteed the sanctity of personal correspondence and provided the entire country with low-cost access to information on public affairs while establishing a right to personal privacy. I mean, how long are we talking about? It would take the letters to go from point A to point B. Rufus Easton was appointed by Thomas Jefferson, first postmaster of St. Louis, under the recommendation of Postmaster General
Postmaster too?
Gideon Granger. Wait, I don't know what the. No, Rufus was appointed. It just jumps to Rufus. Like, it doesn't even. Like, okay, so. The official post office was created in 1792 as the Post Office Department, USPOD. It was based on the constitutional authority empowering Congress to establish post offices and post roads. The 1792 law provided for a greatly expanded postal network and served editors by charging newspapers an extremely low rate. The law guaranteed the sanctity of personal correspondence and provided the entire country with low-cost access to information on public affairs while establishing a right to personal privacy. New paragraph. Rufus Easton was appointed by Thomas Jefferson, first postmaster of St. Louis, under the recommendation of Postmaster General Gideon Granger. You can take that however you want. Rufus Easton was the first postmaster and built the first post office west of the Mississippi. At the same time, Easton was appointed by Thomas Jefferson, we called him TJ, judge of the Louisiana Territory. I mean, think about it. So just think about this. If the president is required to appoint the judges in all of these different positions, what else? Like, that seems like that would take a lot of his day, especially if it came down to researching who each of these people was. How would the president... Wait, is Jefferson the president? Are we saying Jefferson is the president here? I'm assuming Jefferson is the president here. So the president of the United States is appointing postmasters. He's appointing all these different things while he's also dealing with the Civil War that's brewing, and he's doing, like... Do you realize how stupid that sounds? It's kind of like saying, they built a house overnight or in a month. Rufus Easton was the first. Blah, blah. At the same time, Easton was appointed by Jefferson, the judge of the Louisiana Territory, the largest territory in North America. Bruce Adamson wrote that next to Benjamin Franklin, Rufus Easton was one of the most colorful people in the United States postal history. It's a weird thing to say. It was colorful. Okay. It was Easton who educated Abraham Lincoln's Attorney General, Edward Bates. In 1815, Edward Bates moved into the Easton home and lived there for years at 3rd and Elm. What? Yeah, back then that was the thing. When somebody was learning a new job, they'd move in with the guy that was doing the job before. What? Why would he be living with the guy? Today, this is the site of the Jefferson Memorial Park. In 1806, Postmaster General Gideon Granger wrote a 3-page letter to Easton begging him not to partake in a duel with Vice President Aaron Burr. Like, okay, so he says, uh, Aaron Burr and this, they're like, we're going to do a duel. So between the time they decide to do their duel and the actual duel, this guy writes a 3-page letter and sends it via 1806 postmaster, 1815, 18, I don't know. We're jumping around a little bit, but 1806, the 1806 postal system got that to him in time. Like, what? Is it my fault for continuing to think that 1800, 06, 18, whatever, that those people were living in fucking nothing? I know, according to the narrative, we were building incredible buildings and all these crazy things. But, like, think about what we're being told here and how goofy all this is. How it just sort of, it like refutes itself. 2 years earlier, it was Burr who had shot and killed Alexander Hamilton, the president. And so here we are 2 years later, and he's not in jail or anything. Instead, he's going to have a duel with with Rufus Easton, who was one of the first postmaster generals. See, the ChatGPT system didn't think to make all of these different, like, things that happen involve different people. It just kept reusing the same characters. And instead of us realizing that it's just stupid to think, like how are these guys even communicating with each other? Like, this is all just stupid. Where did everybody live? You look at the pictures from back then, and everybody is in these, like, 3-piece suit, 12-piece suits, and hats, big tall hats, and canes, and all this shit, and walking through dirt roads. And what? Like, what? Where were they getting their suits pressed and cleaned and shit like that? Especially since we're led to believe they wore them every day, so.
They didn't wear the same one, stupid.
Well, they did. Sort of what they say. Scotty doesn't know. Many years later, in 1852, Easton's son, Brevet Major General Langdon Chavez Easton, was commissioned by William T. Sherman at Fort Union to deliver a letter to Independence, Missouri. Sherman wrote, in the spring of 1852, General Sherman mentioned that the quartermaster, Major L.C. Easton at Fort Union, New Mexico, had occasion to send me some message east, by a certain date, and contracted with Aubrey to carry it to the nearest post office, then Independence, Missouri, making his compensation conditional on the time consumed. He was supplied with a good horse and an order on the outgoing trains for exchange. Though the whole route was infested with hostile Indians and not a house on it, Aubrey started alone with his rifle. He was fortunate in meeting several outward bound trains and thereby made frequent changes of horse, some 4 or 5, and reached Independence in 6 days, having hardly rested or slept the whole way. Yeah, that makes sense. This guy rode horses, and shot Indians for 5 days in a row.
It could happen.
No, no, 6 days without really sleeping much or anything or eating, because we don't like talking about that part. Well, he just had a bunch of jerky on him, and he would eat his jerky, just riding his horse. Gotta deliver this letter. I gotta deliver this letter. To cover long distances, the post office used a hub and spoke system, with Washington as the hub and chief sorting center. By 1869, the 27,000 local post offices, with 27,000 local post offices to deal with, it had changed to sorting mail en route in specialized railroad mail cars called railway post offices, or RPOs. The system of postal money orders began in 1864. Free mail delivery began in the larger cities in 1863. They had 27,000 local post offices in 1869, so they had special railway post offices. Was a railroad car that was normally operated in passenger service and used specifically for staff to sort mail en route in order to speed delivery. The RPO was staffed by highly trained railway mail service postal clerks and was off limits to passengers on the train. Chosen. The assistant postmaster in 1804, Assistant Postmaster Bradley created this updated map on postal roads connecting towns from Maine Territory to the new Louisiana Territory. These maps were produced in sufficient quality to be displayed in post offices all across the nation. 1804. They did that in 1804.
Yes, they did.
Oh, look, and it has a United States map down here on the bottom. Wow, 1804 was fucking detailed, man. Look at that shit. Wow. I mean, look at the detail up in northern Canada and shit around where we say the North Pole is. What so why did we used to think there were all these lakes and shit up there, and now we're told it's all just solid land? Like look at all the giant lakes compared to the land masses that are pictured here.
They're
They had
saying they found
all
lakes in the desert now.
they had all this detail,
Did you
but
see
they were
that?
wrong. No.
They just found new satellite images that they found lakes all throughout the desert that they didn't know existed.
All this detail of all this place that like some of this is like covered in snow at all points.
Isn't the definition?
Look at all
Desert,
that.
no water.
How did they get all that amazing detail? And they're wrong. They had all the amazing detail, but they were wrong about it.
Because a lot of it is yada yada.
I mean, look at all the detail along South America, all the islands and shit. Look at all that. Mexico, 1804. It's fucking silly when you start, like, really. Come on, guys. Why does this make sense to you? Why would you believe this? The postal system played a crucial role in national expansion. It facilitated expansion of the Western American frontier by creating an inexpensive, fast, convenient communication system. Right, that too. Like, fucking A, let's just do it for free. Fucking A. Yet they, like she was saying the other day, they're in competition with the package handlers, but they have the monopoly on the government contract. So why doesn't the government just pay them more? They aren't in competition. Do you think all of these companies, because most of your mail comes from a company, all of these companies are going to start using USPS to deliver the mail to you? No. Letters from early settlers provided information and boosterism to encourage increased migration to the West, help scattered families stay in touch, and provide assistance and assisted entrepreneurs in finding business opportunities, and made possible regular commercial relationships between merchants in the West and wholesalers and factories back east. The Postal Service likewise assisted the Army in expanding control over the vast western territories. The widespread circulation of important newspapers by mail, such as the New York Weekly Tribune, facilitated coordination among politicians in different states. The Postal Service helped integrate established areas with the frontier, creating a spirit of nationalism and providing a necessary infrastructure. The post office in the 19th century, like, if you don't think this sounds like a kid's fucking history report, like, you're not paying attention. That's what this is. This is just enough details and enough information that if you were writing your fucking high school, college history report, this would be perfect. Your job is to then change things around and use different words so that it doesn't look like you plagiarized it. But they're not asking you to figure anything out. They want you to regurgitate it in your own way. Like, this is just, that's all this is. There's no fucking details here. How did they figure all this out? The post office in the 19th century was a major source of federal patronage. Local postmasterships were rewards for local politicians, often the editors of party newspapers. Because again, how did newspapers exist? How were they printing newspapers back in the day? Prior to the linotype, which was invented in the 1880s by a German clockmaker. How did they do it? About 3/4 of all federal civilian employees worked for the post office. In 1816, it employed 3,341 men, and in 1841, 14,290. The volume of mail expanded much faster than the population, as it carried annually 100 letters and 200 newspapers per 1,000 white population in 1790. That's an interesting way to refer to it. It carried annually 100 letters and 200 newspapers per 1,000 white population in 1790, and 2,900 letters and 2,700 newspapers per thousand in 1840. The post office department was enlarged during the tenure of President Andrew Jackson. As the post office expanded, difficulties were experienced due to the lack of employees and transportation. So if that many letters and that many newspapers per person were being produced, What were they using to haul these things around? Like we have pretty nifty mail cars nowadays.
Well, they started using eagles. The pigeons got too overloaded.
But like that's with the much smaller amount of mail that we get now. What were they doing back then? Was the mail carrier parking his horses at the end of the street and then walking around all the different houses like they do now? How did that work? Or no, wait. They all went they just went to the post office, and then you went to the post office and you were like, "Hey, post guy," and he was like, "Oh, here's your mail." That's how they say it worked, right? So you would have to go to the post office in your town to get your mail. The post office department was enlarged. The post office employees. Wait. As the post office expanded, difficulties were experienced due to lack of employees and transportation. The post office employees at the time were still subject to the so-called spoils system, where faithful political supporters of the executive branch were anointed to positions in the post office and other government corporations as a reward for their patronage. These appointees rarely had prior experience in postal service and mail delivery. Yeah, that would be a bad idea. How are we the most successful corporation of all time? And like all of the stories point to incompetence. This system of political patronage was replaced in 1883 after the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. Oh God, I'm done. I'm done. I appreciate y'all being here. Pedophiles, kill yourself.
Kick it.